The automatic glass doors at St. Mary's Memorial slid open with a quiet hiss, releasing the sterile scent of disinfectant into the cool night air. Inside, the lobby buzzed with the muted sounds of a hospital that never truly slept. Footsteps echoing down corridors, the soft beep of machines, the low murmur of nurses at the desk. Dr. Marcus Bennett stepped forward, his black leather case in hand, his dark suit tailored but simple. He had just left a late conference and returned straight to the hospital, summoned urgently for a patient in critical condition. His stride was steady, calm, a man who knew his place and his purpose. But before he could cross the threshold, a uniformed security guard moved into his path, one hand raised like a stop sign. "Hold it right there," the guard barked. His voice was sharp, echoing across the otherwise quiet lobby. "Visiting hours are over? You can't come in here." Marcus stopped, his brows knitting slightly, though his expression remained composed. "I work here," he said evenly. "I need to get inside." The guard snorted, crossing his arms. "Right. And I'm the hospital director. Try another excuse." Several people in the lobby, a tired mother with a child on her lap, an elderly man flipping through a newspaper, glanced up, sensing tension. Their eyes shifted between the suited black man and the uniformed guard. Marcus adjusted the grip on his case. He had no time for games. "I assure you, I belong here," he replied, his voice calm, his patience intact. But the guard only squared his shoulders, blocking the doorway more firmly. "Not tonight, you don't. Turn around and head out before I make you." The sliding doors shut behind Marcus, sealing him inside the standoff. Around them, the hum of the hospital seemed to pause, as though the building itself was holding its breath. And though Marcus had faced life and death decisions countless times in operating rooms, he knew this confrontation would test something else entirely. The guard planted his boots firmly on the polished floor, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "So," he said, his tone dripping with suspicion, "what exactly are you doing here, dressed like that, carrying that case? Trying to sneak into patient rooms?" Marcus let the insult slide, though a faint crease formed on his brow. "I told you," he answered evenly. "I work here. I was called in for an emergency. A patient needs me." The guard laughed dryly, loud enough to draw stares from across the lobby. "You? Work here? Don't make me laugh. What are you really, custodial? Maintenance? Because you sure as hell aren't medical staff. Not dressed like that." A ripple of whispers passed through the waiting area. The mother with her child frowned. The elderly man lowered his paper, watching more closely now. Marcus drew a steady breath. He had no need to prove himself to a stranger with assumptions, but he also knew time was precious. "I am a surgeon," he said calmly, his voice carrying authority without aggression, "and I need to be upstairs." The guard stepped closer, his hand hovering near the radio clipped to his belt. "Don't lie to me. You're not on any staff list I've seen. You're not going anywhere until I figure out what you're really up to." The leather case in Marcus's hand suddenly felt heavier, though his grip didn't falter. Around them, the hum of the hospital carried on, but the focus of every eye in the lobby was locked on this exchange. Marcus's voice remained steady, though firm. "If you doubt me, check my ID badge. It's right here." But the guard smirked, shaking his head. "Yeah, sure. Flash me a fake badge you printed off your computer? Not falling for it. You think you can just stroll in here and say you're a doctor?" The disbelief, the contempt in his tone, stung more than Marcus let show. He straightened his posture, his gaze steady and unyielding. "I don't think," he said quietly. "I know." Still, the guard held his ground, puffing up with false authority, blind to the truth standing inches from him. And with every passing second, the small crowd of onlookers grew, their whispers feeding the tension that thickened in the sterile, fluorescent-lit lobby. The guard's voice grew louder, sharp enough to cut through the soft hospital hum. "Don't play games with me. I said you're not allowed in here. If you don't leave right now, I'll have the cops drag you out." Heads turned throughout the lobby. A receptionist paused mid-phone call. A delivery man with a cart of supplies slowed to watch. Patients and visitors leaned forward in their chairs, whispering. Marcus remained steady, though the sting of humiliation pressed hard against his chest. He had been in operating rooms where seconds meant the difference between life and death. But here he stood, judged, shouted at, treated like an intruder in the very place where his hands had saved countless lives. "I've told you the truth," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. "You're making a mistake." The guard sneered, taking another step closer. "The only mistake would be letting you pass those doors. You think a suit and a fancy briefcase fool me? You don't belong here. Now move." A ripple of disapproval spread through some of the onlookers. A young woman with a visitor's badge whispered to her friend, "He looks like a doctor. Why won't the guard even check?" Another man muttered, "This is embarrassing." But still, no one intervened. Marcus felt every eye on him, the burn of strangers' judgment heavy on his shoulders. Yet, he refused to bow, refused to lash out. His silence, his composure, were his armor. The guard raised his radio, his finger hovering over the button. "Last warning. Leave, or I'll call this in. You'll be in handcuffs before the hour's up." Marcus stood his ground, meeting the guard's glare with calm defiance. "Do what you feel you need to," he said evenly. "I will still be here." The lobby was silent now, the scene frozen in a tense tableau. The guard puffed up with false authority, the black man standing tall and dignified, and the watching crowd caught between disbelief and unease. And though the guard thought he had won control, the balance was about to shift, because the people who truly knew Marcus Bennett were on their way. Marcus slowly set his leather case down at his feet, his movements deliberate, controlled. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and produced his hospital ID badge, clipped neatly inside a clear holder. With steady hands, he held it out toward the guard. "Here," he said simply, "my identification. Read it." The guard snorted, not even taking the card. "Fake. I've seen better forgeries on kids sneaking into bars. You really think this little trick will work on me?" A low murmur rippled across the lobby. One of the patients waiting in a wheelchair frowned. "Why doesn't he just look at it?" another visitor whispered, shaking her head. The receptionist at the front desk shifted uncomfortably but stayed silent, caught between duty and fear of undermining security. Marcus did not flinch. His voice carried quiet strength. "You refuse to look at evidence that disproves your claim. Why is that?" The guard's cheeks flushed. He jabbed a finger toward Marcus's chest. "Because I know a liar when I see one. Men like you don't stroll in here in the middle of the night claiming they're surgeons. You don't look like a doctor." The words hung in the air like poison. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. His silence spoke louder than any rebuttal could. The guard stepped closer, lowering his voice, but not enough to hide the sneer. "Let me make this crystal clear. You're not getting past me. You so much as try, and you'll be spending the night in a cell instead of in this hospital." For the first time, Marcus allowed the faintest smile to touch his lips. Not one of amusement, but of patience. He looked past the guard, toward the hallway that led to the surgical wing, his domain. "I've given you every chance," Marcus said quietly. "Now it's only a matter of time before the truth arrives." The guard blinked, confused by the calm certainty in his voice. And right on cue, the side door of the lobby hissed open. A cluster of nurses walked in, their arms full of charts and supplies, their conversation halting the moment they noticed the standoff at the entrance. Their eyes widened in recognition. The guard didn't know it yet, but his authority was about to crumble in front of everyone watching. The side door swung shut behind the group of nurses, the faint clatter of their clipboards and supply carts filling the silence left by the standoff. At first, they simply paused, puzzled by the tense scene in the lobby. Then, their eyes landed on Marcus. For a heartbeat, the whole group froze. Recognition spread across their faces like a wave. One of them, a younger nurse clutching a patient chart, gasped audibly. "Dr. Bennett?" she whispered, her voice cracking. Another nurse, older and seasoned, dropped her pen to the floor. "Oh my God," she murmured, glancing between Marcus and the guard. "What is going on here?" The guard stiffened, clearly unsettled by their reaction. "You know this man?" he demanded, suspicion still clinging to his tone. The younger nurse blinked in disbelief at the question. "Know him? That's Dr. Marcus Bennett. He's..." She stopped herself, but her astonishment had already cut through the crowd of onlookers. A buzz of voices spread through the lobby. Visitors who had been silent during the confrontation now leaned forward, whispering. The mother with the child on her lap frowned deeply. "He's really a doctor?" she asked aloud, more to herself than anyone else. Marcus stood silently, allowing the nurse's reactions to speak louder than his own words ever could. His posture remained calm, composed, though his eyes betrayed the faintest flicker of weariness at having to endure yet another moment of doubt. The guard, suddenly less sure of himself, tried to reassert control. "He claims to be a doctor," he said, his voice wavering just slightly. "Anyone can say that. And those badges, easy to fake. For all we know, he's—" But the older nurse cut him off sharply. "Stop!" Her voice rang out, clear, stern, and final. She turned fully to Marcus, her eyes softening. "Dr. Bennett, we're so sorry." We didn't realize every whisper in the room stilled. The shift was happening. The guard swallowed hard, realizing too late that the story he'd spun was unraveling right in front of him, and the next word spoken would leave him no ground to stand on at all. The nurses exchanged uneasy glances, then the older one, charge nurse Alvarez, stepped forward, her voice steady, but carrying a note of reverence. "Chief Surgeon Bennett," she said clearly, the title echoing in the hushed lobby. "We didn't expect you back tonight. We're relieved you're here. The cardiac patient upstairs has been waiting for you." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. "Chief Surgeon." The words hung in the air like a gavel strike. The younger nurse clutched her chart to her chest, nodding eagerly. "That's him. He's the one who saved Mr. Reyes last month after the crash. Everyone in the surgical wing knows who Dr. Bennett is." All eyes swung back to Marcus. He hadn't moved, hadn't raised his voice, hadn't needed to. The truth had arrived without his effort. The guard's face drained of color. His smirk was gone, replaced by an open-mouthed silence. His hand slipped away from the radio at his hip. He stammered, "Chief Surgeon?" as if the words themselves were too heavy to believe. "Yes," Alvarez snapped, turning her sharp gaze on the guard. "And you just blocked him from entering his own hospital, from getting to his patient." Whispers erupted in the lobby. "Chief Surgeon? He's the top doctor here? All this time? And they treated him like that?" Marcus bent down calmly, picked up his leather case, and adjusted his jacket. He met the guard's stunned eyes briefly, then turned toward the hallway without anger, without even a word. His silence was its own kind of authority, unshakable, undeniable. And as he stepped forward, the group of nurses parted like an honor guard, their faces alight with respect. The man who had been treated as an intruder seconds before was now revealed as the highest-ranking surgeon in the hospital, and the guard, pale and trembling, could do nothing but watch as the truth left him stripped bare in front of everyone. The lobby seemed to hold its breath as Marcus walked forward, his footsteps steady against the polished floor. Every eye followed him, not as an intruder, not as a suspect, but as the man the hospital trusted with its most critical lives. The nurses closed ranks behind him, forming a protective wall of respect. One by one, they greeted him softly. "Evening, Doctor Bennett." "We're glad you're here, sir. We've prepared the charts." Their voices were warm, reverent, each word carrying more weight than any accusation ever could. Visitors rose slightly from their seats, murmuring with awe. The mother who had earlier watched in silence now whispered to her son, "That man saves lives here." The elderly patient wiped his eyes, shaking his head at the injustice they'd all just witnessed. The guard, frozen at his post by the doors, looked as if the ground had fallen away beneath him. His arms hung limp, his earlier bravado gone. Red crept up his cheeks as whispers pierced him from every corner of the room. He blocked the chief surgeon. How could he not know? Shameful. Marcus never glanced back. His composure never wavered. He moved down the hallway, the nurses flanking him like a silent salute, their admiration louder than any applause. And in that quiet march, the humiliation shifted. The man once accused of not belonging now walked as the rightful authority, his dignity untouchable. The guard remained rooted by the entrance, shrinking under the weight of the truth and the collective judgment of the crowd. As Marcus disappeared toward the surgical wing, the lobby slowly came alive again, but the memory of what had just unfolded lingered heavy in the air. For those who had witnessed it, there would be no forgetting the night a man was treated like a trespasser, until the hospital itself rose to reveal him as its chief surgeon.